The greatest lie country music ever told was convincing the world that it was white. We're going to dispel that myth and find out the Black origins of country music right here on The Frequency. What's up, everybody, and welcome to The Frequency. I'm your host, Dee Barnes. That line, the greatest lie country music told the world was convincing, the greatest lie that country music said was telling the world, convincing the world that it was white. I got that line from an article that went viral from my good friend, music, pop culture, politics writer, Taylor Crumpton. Taylor, welcome to the show. This was a line from an article you wrote. Beyonce has always been country. I couldn't wait to get you on here to talk about it. It's been, going crazy all over the airways. Basically because you predicted it. You predicted this moment with Act 2 being a country album. Please take us back a little bit and tell us when, because I know it was like a tweet or something that you put out like maybe a year ago. I don't know. Maybe, I think it was over a year ago, right?
It's a funny story. So last year, I had the opportunity to host a conversation with Dr. Francesca Royster. She's the author of Black Country Music. Mm-hmm. And in her text, she has a whole entire chapter about daddy lessons and situating daddy lessons and Beyonce performing that with the chicks at the CMAs as one of the ways in which this modern day country music industry is so violent and hostile towards Black women.
Right.
And it's funny because in that moment, I remember watching it live and seeing reactions on social media. And there was a very stark divide of why is Beyonce doing this? From a lot of African-American users on social media. And then the white users kind of said the inverse. And they're like, why is she coming from our culture, right? Why is she coming for country music? And as someone who sits at the intersections of both, I took a chance to be like, but this is her music, right? There is a socialization of Black girls in the South, especially in Texas, right? Where the borders between country and Western and cosmopolitan are very blended or very nuanced, right? So when she speaks about growing up in Houston, Texas, Houston is a major metropolitan area, but also it has a very strong agricultural, ranching, farmer base. Mm-hmm. So it's an identity in which Black girls who grow up in Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, all of these metropolitan hubs in the South, we all have a country identity or claim to country, whether it's ancestral, whether it's familiar, whether it's just from where we were raised. Mm-hmm. So I was like, she's gonna do something with this. And years later, we saw through Lemonade and even the costumes on the Renaissance World Tour that she had always been hinting towards a country era.
Right. So let me back up a little bit too, because you are from Texas. You're from Dallas, correct?
That I am.
So what was your first memory of hearing about a country music or country song?
It has to go back to my grandparents. My father's side is from Mississippi, from the Delta, and my mother's side has always lived in Texas for generations. So country music to me was sitting down with one of my elders and just being on the couch that was traditionally floral and wrapped in plastic and just listening to them, right? It's something that there's not a pinpoint or a discovery. Yeah. It's just something that I heard as a child. And I was blessed to have a musical family. My father was in the choir. My mother's in the choir as well. And there is such a tie of country music to Black gospel, to Black Southern gospel. So even in hearing modern day country, you can still pick up those notes of the music and the songs that you may have shared with your family or that your family members may have sung when they were in the choir.
See, that's why I went to your line in particular, and I messed it up in the beginning, but it was, to quote it again, it's the greatest lie country music ever told was convincing the world that it was white.
Mm-hmm.
And I think so many people believe that, you know what I mean? Like they really feel like how you were saying, like backing up to Beyonce with the Dixie Chicks, which I thought was phenomenal when she did Daddy Lessons on the CMAs. But what stuck out to me in that moment was the camera cutting away to the reaction of the audience.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a lot of and they knew they were on camera, but there was a lot of like tight face, like there was a lot of tension. They didn't know, not that they didn't know, but they didn't want to react. It was like they were holding back the reaction, and they were just like you said, like they felt like they were being their culture was being co-opted, which was not the case at all. I mean, music to me is everyone's culture, but that's another subject. I just felt that in that moment, people were not giving her props or not even enjoying the moment. And the way the Dixie Chicks have been treated over the years, you know what I mean? From the hostility that the backlash that they got. And I thought that was an incredible moment because she picked them in particular to do the performance with.
Country music not only has a race problem, it has a gender problem. Mm-hmm. And people who see Taylor Swift at the top of the Billboard charts probably would not think that country music has a problem with gender, right. But there's still women in that industry, in that environment, fighting for equality and fighting for like just to be treated as same as their male counterparts and peers. So mm-hmm. when you see the Chicks, who are one of the, highest selling acts in country. Right. They did such a good job of crossing over in the new millennium. But right. when they spoke out about the Iraq war, that was seen as unpatriotic. In the modern day country music, one of the ways it markets itself is to be America first, is to be very American. Mm-hmm. So even though the most American thing you can do is freedom of speech and speak out of war, because of how they did it and who they directed it to,
right.
country music couldn't allow them to be successful in the industry anymore, therefore blacklisting them.
Man, every time I think about that, it just like, I don't even have words for it. But I do know that the reaction from the CMA is like, I think, didn't they say that they weren't even going to come back and perform anymore because of the way Beyonce was treated in that moment?
Yeah, the lead singer, and she was the one to, I think, bring this to us, because this wasn't something that came from Beyonce or any of the band members. Right. It was the lead singer of the Chicks who witnessed that mistreatment of Beyonce and her band members backstage and said, I won't return. So that is very telling that I think a lot of times people believe that Black women cry wolf, but Beyonce kept that to herself. And it was right. someone who was an ally of her, as a champion to her, to say, this is unright and this is unjust. And I have to dispel this myth or this narrative, this rumor, because we also know that Black women and Black women in music are stereotyped as divas. Right. And there's nothing diva about the way that Beyonce performed at the CMAs, but the way in which they treated her is more telling of the ways in which, even still to this day, they think of Black women in country music.
Right. Do you think that was the catalyst for her motivation, basically, for doing a country album? Or do you think this was something that's always been, in her plan, basically?
I think it's both. Yes, she's always had, custom designs that were country and Western inspired because of her mother. So it's something that had always been there underlying the surface. I think this served as the catalyst in saying, let me be more open and forward about this, right? Mm-hmm. Let me do a little bit more overt. Let me have the world listen and see. Because I think if she would have done this early on in her career, it wouldn't have had the substantial impact that it's having right now.
True. So is that what motivated you to write the article? Inspired you, basically?
That article,
the title is just perfect. Beyonce has always been country.
Yeah. And I think for me, when I hear country, right? I think of my mother. My mother always refers to herself as country. But whenever she lived outside of the Southern United States, when folks called her country, it was in a derogatory manner, right? There are people from the Southern United States who move and migrate outside. And once they hear, your country, it's kind of a way of saying you're backwards, you're illiterate, right? Yes. You're not cosmopolitan, you're not educated. So I think it's ironic how country towards white people can be seen as something that's like a virtual signal as an in-group, but country on Black people is seen as something that's detrimental. So when I said Beyonce has always been country, it is saying that it is okay, and more than okay, it is a blessing, and we should be proud that Black people can be country. There's nothing wrong with being Black and country in the United States. That is a myth and a narrative that really needs to be undone because it's still impacting folks today. If we can take it to our place, think about what UGK and Pimp C said about country rap tunes and Southern hip hop. What did New York and the West Coast say about Southerners when they entered hip hop? They were country, right? It's one word that has a lot of meanings, but whenever it's applied to someone who is Black, it always means something negative or distasteful.
True that. We're going to get more into the origins of country music, the Black origins of country music. We're going to take a short break. We'll be back with Taylor.
When you talk about Blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Back right here on The Frequency. I'm your host, Dee Barnes, and my guest, Taylor Crumpton. Taylor, please join me. We were just getting into the origins, the Black origins of I almost said hip hop. My mind is like, but country music. And we left off, and I think that's probably why I was thinking hip hop, because you were just talking about Pimp C in particular. And you're absolutely right. I have heard that, as a matter of fact, coming from New York to California in the early or the late 80s, I remember that was a term that they would use on a lot of West Coast people in particular, because a lot of them had migrated from the South to California, like, for example, like a Snoop Dogg, and he has that certain sound in his voice. And they would use that term, you country. And it wasn't a good thing to be called that. But I want to get into not only more on your article. Congratulations, by the way, because it went viral. But more about the history. There was one woman in particular you mentioned in the article, and I think that's something that we should break down and talk about, because as I was sharing with you earlier, I did not know about her history in country music, a Black woman in country music, Linda Martell, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Linda Martell. Please, do you know, can you share any knowledge about Linda with us?
Yeah, Linda Martell is one of 8 Black women to chart on Billboard in the country genre. Yeah, there's only been 8.
Wow. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, the reaction is warranted, right? This is a genre that has intentionally kept Black women out, Black people out, Indigenous people out, Latinx people out. I mean, it has done intentional work to make sure that those who reach those chart-topping positions are white men and then white women, right? And that is done with intentionality, because when you hear of folks like Linda Martell, who was a pioneer, who was the first to open up the doorway and the pathway for all the 7 women after her to chart. She's the first Black woman to perform at the Grand Ole Opry, one of country music's most prestigious venues. She was the first to break a lot of barriers. And Linda Martell, the record label that she was a part of was called Plantation Records.
Wow.
So even while she's making this history, right, being the first opening these doors, she is on a record label and therefore making money for a record label that is named Plantation, right? Just her making revenue and profit for this white-owned record label is showing you how they see her and how the country music industry is not ashamed of any type of rhetoric or verbiage that is drawing ties to the antebellum South, right? A period of time where she was 3/5 of a person. So Linda, who did all of this, was not adequately paid. She did not receive her just compensation. She didn't receive her due and her flowers, to the point where, decades later, you have someone called Reese Palmer, one of the 8 Black women who charted on Billboard, who took Linda's Billboard charting album, Color Me Country, and used that as the name for her show on Apple Music Radio, where she talks about pioneers like Linda and also creates space for this generation of emerging talent like Brittany Spencer to talk about their experience of being Black women in country music, right? It's a very niche experience, and Reese is paying it forward because that is one of the only way in which Black women in country music survive. Because even though there's so few numbers in the Billboard charts, there's so much of abundance in them in the country music industry, right? As songwriters, as producers. But, the Beyonce effect is that it's shining a light on everyone who has been told or overlooked.
We talk a lot about a lot of women, and Black women in particular in country music. Did it have the same effect? And I'm not talking about Beyonce effect. I'm talking about Black men in country music and not having success. The first person that comes to mind, of course, is Charlie Pride. But do you feel that Black men in that space face the same thing? Because, we were talking about the fact that, it being racist and sexist. So do you think that Black in that genre had any success, or to face the same obstacles, basically?
They still face racial discrimination, right? But you do have to look at a Darius Rucker, a Kane Brown, a Jimmy Allen, right? And the ways in which they have achieved crossover success at a faster speed than their female counterparts, right? So yes, and I believe they've spoken about it mostly around like 2020, where because of the unfortunate passing of George Floyd, then a lot of pledges were made in the record industry towards Black artists, and Black artists felt comfortable to speak out about a lot of inequalities and inequities that they've experienced. And I know Darius Rucker has spoken about it at that time. But there's also ways in which, kind of similar to Black men in hip hop, their gender allows them admittance into an old boys club that women are. So there's the yes, but there's the and part.
Right. So back to the women of, you said Linda was one of 8. Do you know the other 7 women? Because I'm not sure. I mean, I thought about Tina Turner because I know she actually did a country album.
Yeah, her first album post Ike was country, but
it was her first album.
When she left Ike, Nutbush City Limits, I believe, because she is from Tennessee. Which even in that, like her album was beautiful and was country, but was not marketed as a country album, right? Even when Beyonce's first singles went to radio, they weren't serviced as country singles.
Right.
So there's even a conversation to be made about.
Wait, hold on. You said the singles that she just dropped now?
When they were first released, were not serviced as country. They were not serviced to the radio as country.
Really?
Yeah. And
has it changed now because it's been since the Super Bowl?
Now they've changed, but upon release, they weren't serviced as country.
Wow.
And, even though I think now not that many people listen to the radio, right? Because there's the end of streaming, that does not apply to country. Radio still plays a very intentional, powerful role in determining which artists are seen as eligible for awards, right? The radio programmers and DJs still maintain a lot of power. And that's why you heard and saw those first battles and conflicts upon release, because I think folks were starting to understand how country music operates different to hip hop or R&B or pop.
Right. Wow, I did not know that the songs dropped and they weren't serviced to country radio. That's shocking, actually. That's shocking. Yeah. But like you said, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think categorization plays a heavy amount in this conversation, right? Even though Beyonce exists in like a post-genre world, and a lot of artists, SZA, Lizzo, they are able to do rock and R&B and pop and all these things, that it's not seen as something, different.
Right.
He still holds on to the borders and the barriers of genre. So upon release, I believe that it was Columbia Records who did not categorize them as country, or didn't serve them as country. And then within like 24 to 72 hours, it was fixed. But I mean, conversation to be had about how if all the other artists of all the other sections of radio in this industry allow post-genre, allow fluidity, why is country so stagnant and fixed?
Yeah, why is that? I'm trying to, is it racism? I mean, bottom line, racism and sexism, holding on to that gatekeeping country, that makes no sense. I mean, because when you were talking about it earlier about indigenous and the indigenous black cowboys, they've always existed. It's not like this is something new.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the thing is, whoever controls the media controls the mind. And for generations and decades, CMA and CMT and all the industries that work with these organizations have promoted an idea of what country is, right? I even think about that ABC series, Nashville, right? Nashville is associated kind of I experience this when I go out onto the world and I tell people I'm from Dallas. The first thing that comes to mind is the soap opera. And I don't look anything like the soap opera.
Right.
So there's ways in which media also plays a way in promoting and maintaining this narrative of what it means to be country and what it means to be from Nashville.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think Beyonce, and I'm just asking, and not that you're in the mind of Beyonce, but you wrote that incredible article. What do you think her goal is with this album?
I think she has moved into this position in her career of being an educator. Beyonce said in her homecoming film that she always wanted to go to college. She always wanted to be an HBCU.
Yes.
Wanted to go to HBCU. So she has this desire for education, right? Mm-hmm. She studies all the Black entertainers that have come before her. And because she is a student, and I would argue she is a scholar, she is using her scholarship and her statue to educate and to inform, right? Just like you would if you went to a music studies class or an African-American studies class. I think she is using her producers, the songwriters, the instrumentation, the visuals, all of the things, right? Music is the most accessible thing in the world.
Exactly.
To educate people.
Right, right. Man, so she's definitely on the path, I hope, to album of the year. Do you think that those doors are going to be open now?
You know, in the conversation since the release of Texas Hold'em and 16 Carriages, there has been a definition of what Black country music is and a definition of what white country music is. White country music historically has always won the awards, have always got the certifications. Black country music has not. So I think the argument is, if she creates and produces a Black country album, will it be seen, will it be eligible, and will it be awarded like white country has for years? So there is this, I think, conversation brewing in Nashville, and I believe probably with all the chapters that make up the Recording Academy, right? Is what happens if she were to get album of the year? Because everybody has started to look to Beyonce not getting album of the year as a failure of the Recording Academy and a failure as the institution. But Beyonce and herself has been deemed an institution. Right. So which institution is going to win? And also, has she reached this part in her career where her legacy and her lineage is worth more than album of the year?
Definitely. Ooh, I love the way you put that. Okay, look, we're going to take a quick break and we're going to come back and talk more about legacy of country music.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, you're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Back right here on The Frequency. I'm your host, Dee Barnes, and my guest, Taylor Crumpton. We are talking about the legacy and the origins, Black origins of country music. Taylor, please join me because I want to talk more about Linda, but I need to back up and go, reference your article, D. Ford Bailey. Mm-hmm. I did not know who that was until I read your article, which is mind-boggling. And he was the first Black country star.
Yeah, and like Linda, died without receiving his just due. Wow. There are countless known and unknown Black pioneers in country music. And even before country music was country music, it was hillbilly music.
Right.
And hillbilly music was always multiracial because it came out of the Appalachia. Appalachia is African American, it is white, it is indigenous, right? It is everyone who worked in those mines in those fields. And there was always a level of cultural exchange, right? Country music, before it was dictated as country, was exchange, right? Among these different cultures that were working in the fields, that were working as chain gangs, right? These are a lot of work songs. These are a lot of labor songs, right? But whenever something that was very, I would say, radical in origin, right? And thinking about multiracial, multicultural, also being united because you are this class, when it becomes commodified and capitalized and whitenized, then everybody who contributed to it is erased from the narrative, right? We've seen this in so many depictions of, I even think like hip hop stories where people have been omitted from the narrative, or one narrative that has been untrue and false was promoted as a singular narrative.
Right.
And we see that a lot in country music. This was more, I think, intense distaste, because unlike a lot of the other genres that have been racially integrated, country music still operates on this racial binary.
Right.
So I think it's more distinctive when we see Black contributors erased and omitted, right? It's like, oh, like Leslie Riddle, like there's this shock that there's only been 8 Black women who have charted.
Who was the one you just mentioned? Leslie
Riddle, he was the pioneer of hillbilly music. Hillbilly music was country music's prerequisite.
Right.
And he was not given his flowers and just when country music became like popularized. So even before Linda and Defer Bailey, you have Leslie Riddle.
Wow. See the history right there, like you were talking about. And I think too, what Beyonce is doing also is opening up the doors, like for us to come out of the shadows basically and acknowledge that we, I'm sure there's a whole generation that I'm just discovering that, are Black artists that are in country music. I was just naming some for you earlier. I was telling you about the Shabuzi, and, we all know Mickey Guyton, Laura Love. Have you heard of her? Laura Love, Charlie Crockett. These are all people I'm just discovering. And I like Charlie Crockett a lot. He reminds me, he's got that old school style and a deep, deep voice. Shy Carter. Of course, we talked about Darius. Of course, we talked about Charlie Pride. Tierra Kennedy. Jimmy Allen. And of course, I think we mentioned also Kane Brown. It's like these are young artists that are out there doing it, and I think now more they're going to get more exposure because of Beyonce dropping this album. I mean, I think people are really discovering the true roots, the true origin of country music, and I think it's something that everyone should embrace. But I know the backlash is going to be interesting. And I know these artists have been out there for a minute. You know what I mean? So I don't know. They probably don't get the airplay that they need. I'm sure they're getting some streaming. But I wonder what their audience looks like when they do live performances. Like, I wonder what the racial makeup is of the audience, because, like we were just talking about, music is just like the common denominator. It's the common thing that everybody gravitates to. So you've got you've got to show it when they show up to the concert and they see that it's an artist that's African American. I'm sure they're not leaving per se. They have to be fans of the music. Do you think that it's going to be more and more inclusive with country music, or no?
As someone who has grown up and gone to country music dance halls, there is.
Were you the only, were there a few Black people there, or were there?
No, I mean, there is a significant amount of African Americans.
Okay.
But it's the environment and the aura, right? Because dance halls, most venues back in the day, were racially segregated. Right. Country music dance halls are one of the few spaces where, depending on where you're at in this nation, it does feel like olden times, right? Where there's a sense of I need to have about a couple of Black people with me to feel comfortable in this space.
Right.
And, you know, for folks who are unfamiliar of my background, I went to school in West Texas. Abilene, Texas is a rural town. And the only place we had for like 18 to 24-year-olds who were in undergrad was a country dance bar. It was called Guitars and Cadillacs. And yeah, I boot scooted a lot of that time.
Boot scooted. The lingo. Boot scooted.
I can hit a mean line dance and a nice spin and a nice tussle on any given day.
I love it.
But being there, I remember even the way in which like you were perceived as a Black person in this space. If you're a Black woman, there is a preference on you not having natural hairstyle when you're in the country music hall space, right? There is a preference of you having to dress like everybody else is dressing, right? I remember one time I was two-stepping with a white boy and he told me that I had a little bit too much swag in my hips, right?
No.
So still remember to this day. So there's a lot of racial microaggressions, but I still had some of the best time two-stepping with my girlfriends, because even then, when you're in this dance hall, this circle, you're seeing white boys not wanting to dance with Black girls. Wow. You're seeing Latinx boys wanting to choose the white girls to dance. So if you're a single Black girl, most of the time you're dancing with your girlfriends, which is funny because you're almost without knowingly inherently queering this space that's very rigid on like who gets to lead and who gets to follow and who is your partner, who's not your partner, because it was out of necessity. Like we wanted to dance, but we were not being chosen. But then you have moments where I can hear the big cowbell now, where you have like the minute like, whee! And he like rings the bell.
Right.
And then you have the line dance, and without knowing it, the whole entire space is racially integrated.
Nice.
Right. There are ways in which country music can also be read and categorized as dance music, because some of these songs that Beyonce, I believe she will plan to put out, Texas Hold'em at the very least, is a dance song, is a line dancing song. And I saw recently that there is a rumored Zydeco remix that is coming. And for folks unfamiliar with Zydeco, that is Creole, that is Louisiana, that is East Texas, right? And that in itself is like highlighting a musical subgenre that is very nuanced and niche to people who are the descendants of Black folks in that particular part of Texas and Louisiana. Right. So not only is this a musical study, but this is a cultural study happening and unfolding in real time.
I'm loving that. I'm loving that. Do you think this is going to inspire more artists to mix the genres? Like, for example, a couple of the people that I just named, I think it was the guy Shabuzi, but I'm thinking more of like going back to Little Nas X. I really wish that he had, expanded on his Old Town Road music. Do you think now that there's going to be a mix in with, what's the word I'm looking for? The Yeehaw agenda. Break that down to me, because I remember when Little Nas X dropped and that came out, and I know the background to that whole phrase.
Yeah, the Yeehaw agenda was created by one of my friends, Bree. She is from Dallas, Texas, and she did a great job of creating a digital archive of Black cowboys and Black cowgirls in pop culture and media and television and film and music. And that aligned with this Old Town Road moment that rocked country music and that rocked the nation and the world.
It really did.
So when Little Nas X, this Black gay man from Georgia, rides this horse, and it becomes a song that every child in America sings, and then it reaches every single adult, and it really benefits from this like social media TikTok era. Like it really, I think, is a song that we will archive of like the power of TikTok at a very early age in that platform's like longevity, right? And I remember I was on a country music panel in 2020 about Old Town Road.
Wow.
And the consensus was, even if he doesn't make a country music album, he's already shown that country music is fragile in the ways in which it eventually did succumb to the overarching pressure of Lil Nas not being let in. Because remember,
right,
that Old Town Road was kicked off of the country charts. It wasn't deemed as country enough. The same thing happened years prior at the Grammys with Daddy Lessons not receiving a nomination because people believed it wasn't country enough. Right. So you have Daddy Lessons, you have Old Town Roads, you have the unfortunate passing of George Floyd. All of these three events that happen within a 5 to 10 year period have started to poke at the bear that is country music, right? It's saying, hey, we're doing this music. People are liking the music that we're doing. It's not the music that you've historically done, but it's the music we're doing. And it's still country in nature and country in root and origin. So I think post Beyonce,
right,
because the eyes of the world are on country music like they've never been before, one will have to see if they're finally going to let the borders down or the inverse, that there is so much attention and conversation that they will stand 10 toes down and even become more regressive, right?
Right. Yeah, I definitely feel like I feel like I don't know. We are at a moment where we're gonna see which way it tips, because even with Lil Nas, it took Billy Ray coming on the remix to legitimize him. You know, for don't you agree?
I highly agree. And that's something that we don't do in other Black genres of music.
Right.
There's Jack Harlow didn't need to hop on the mic with anyone in the industry to receive a BET award, right?
Right.
Sam Smith won a BET award, and that was before they did a song, I believe, with Mary J. Blige. So it's interesting in how the genres and the industries that are historically coded as Black will give awards, will co-sign, will co-stamp without any of those non-Black artists having to do some type of performance. But with Lil Nas X, there needed to be someone who is seen as a gatekeeper or a worldwide ambassador of this country to allow him to perform. And even if you take Old Town Road, there's a remix with Billy Ray, a remix with Diplo, remix with BTS, right? It showed that country music has the fluidity and elasticity to be multiracial and to be multilingual.
And because it started out as multiracial, I believe. Okay, look, we're going to take a quick break and we're going to talk more about it.
Gotcha.
Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
An angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate Black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
There's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Back right here on The Frequency. I'm your host, Dee Barnes, and we are talking about the Black origins of country music with my guest, Taylor Crumpton. Taylor, please join me. I've just been thinking about everything you said, especially the last, before the last break, about the inclusion of the multicultural aspect of country music. And I'm looking forward to seeing like what Queen Bee is getting ready to do when she drops this album, because just the uproar and the excitement, the tension with just the two singles has been very interesting. And then I didn't know until you told me that it wasn't even charted as country music until recently. You know what I mean? But I think I'm just really excited, and thinking back to Daddy's Lessons and watching that performance, and even just hearing it for the first time, I felt it just even on that album, like, oh, this is a country song. And it makes perfect sense for her to, do this. It makes perfect sense because, like you said, like the article says, the perfect title, she has always been country. These are her roots. Mm-hmm. And I think who better to challenge this system of, the white male, only club, the boys club, with this country music, even though there's a lot of women in that space, but not a lot of women of color. And I'm finding out now, like I'm looking at this list, because I'm telling you, I just watched like all these videos, just discovering it from your article. I started doing some researching and like thinking about, because I knew a few, but I didn't know that there were so many of them out there. And I hope that this moment, shines light on all of them. You know what I mean? I hope that this is the moment for it. And I know you're going to be at the show. I know you're going to be at the show and two-stepping, right?
I have to. I love two-stepping. There's something so intimate about it. I was talking to one of my girlfriends about Daddy Lessons, and typically the first person you learn how to two-step with as a girl is your father, right? It is a symbol of intimacy, right? Of them kind of welcoming you into this space, almost like the father-daughter dance. Yeah, like the father-daughter dance in the quinceañera is kind of familiar with what two-stepping is. Right. And it's a very intimate something. You have to trust someone, especially if you start adding like trips, like like spins and everything.
Right.
So I'm excited to see if that intimacy and that love will be a theme in this tour, whatever it may be themed, because there was such a spirit of community at the Renaissance World Tour, of expression, of liberation. So I'm curious on how the themes that I've picked up on these last two releases will be seen in, whether it's a touring setting. I know a lot of people rumor that she may be doing something with the spear, but I'm really excited to see how she will tell this story visually. Right.
All I can think about too is when she had released the one, I think it was like one of the next to last Ivy Park collaboration. You have it?
I have the chaps.
You have the chaps. Wow. When she released that, I loved how it brought light again to an obvious thing that's there, but it just brought attention to the Black cowboy. Mm-hmm. And I think too that now there's so many Black cowboys. I mean, they have the Black rodeo. I think there's going to be so much more attention brought to that space. Like we're going to see more and more, like that Yeehaw agenda is really, really happening. Right?
I'm happy to see it. Me too. There's always been a Houston rodeo. Like Bun B is taking over the Houston rodeo. Erykah Badu performed last year at the Houston rodeo. There's always been Black rodeos. There's always been Black trail rides. So it's something that, I don't even think she's reclaiming in a sense. It's just something that she's shedding light on a history and a lineage and a culture that has always existed, right? We've always been here. Black cowboys and Black cowgirls have always been here. So I think it's just raising awareness and probably re-educating people about things that have continued to exist post Great Migration.
Right, right. And like you said, it's a re-education too on the pioneers of you know, Black country music. I don't know if we even should categorize it as Black country music or just Black country artists. Maybe I should rephrase it like that, because I'm learning, you know what I mean? And I think everyone is learning like who these artists are. And maybe now too, there'll be a moment where they get their just due, their flowers, you know, after the fact, but still there'll be an awareness, you know, with like Linda Martell and Bailey before Bailey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there'll be like that. I think I'm hoping that that's what will happen, that we'll recognize the pioneers, you know. And even now thinking back to Tina Turner's album, I want to grab that one. I remember that clearly, and not really thinking about it as a country album, but it was. You know what I mean? It was. I mean, and then those are all the roots right there, especially with Texas in particular. You guys, there's a lot of roots down there. All the people you just mentioned, there's a lot of roots down there. So we're going to probably see, you know, even more artists come in. And I want to see how too it flows into hip hop in particular. I want to see how that flows, because I'm catching a couple of different artists out there, and I like how the genres, you know, mix. And I'm excited about, you know, the acceptance of it all. You know what I mean? And we'll see how it tips, you know what I mean? Because there's still a lot of resistance, but it takes a nation of million to hold us back. It takes a nation of million to hold us back. Taylor, thank you so much for coming on today, taking your time, breaking down your article. Congratulations on that. I mean, I love your writing. I'm a big fan of it. And this right here, you predicted it. You need to pick me out some lottery numbers. Stop playing.
Okay. No.
Stop playing, sis.
Lottery numbers. I already shared my Act 3 theory, so no one can come after me.
Oh, Act 3? Is Act 3 going to be rock? It better be.
Well, rock and roll is country.
This is true. And
the most famous rock and roll girl, Tina Turner, is from the country.
That's
who
right.
is Beyonce's biggest inspiration. Tina
Turner. So it all makes sense. Okay, you heard it here. You heard it here first on The Frequency with my girl Taylor Crumpton. Okay, I appreciate you, sis. Thank you so much. Thank you for educating us on, you know, the origins of country music. I mean, I'm learning so much. I hope the audience learns so much. Please do your research, look it up, stream those other artists that I ran off, because they're incredible. I mean, if you check them out, you'll see that they've been in this space, and, you know, now it's going to explode. It's just going to be, you know, a big thing. And I'm excited. I'm excited for it. So thank you. This is a perfect way to, you know, end our Black History Month with learning about the history of the real history of country music. And thank you, Taylor, so much. I appreciate it. All right. Mwah. Woo. And another exciting episode right here on The Frequency. I hope you guys learned something. We're loving the country music. Go ahead and stream that music. It's fun. It's exciting. And now you know the truth. See you next time on The Frequency.